That's the one you see all the top of the mountain there. Those are the good ones.
Down the ramp, cars open that way. And anywhere you like, walk.
All right. Oh, okay. I'm gonna sit over here. Oh, alright. Sorry.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Branson Scenic Railway. Safety is our number one priority here, and I have a few safety items to share with you. On each car of the train, there are electrical cabinets. Under no circumstances should they be opened by anyone other than our. There are emergency handbrake systems on each car. And once again, these should be touched or tampered with. And for your safety as you walk between the cars, please be aware that there are sliding plates on the vestibule floors that will be shifting. So please be cautious so they don't touch your toes. We want everyone to come back with the same number of toes to the start of the trip. Now it's time to lean back and relax and get ready for a great trip through the Ozarks. Now when this is your first time on a bus,
If you need a restroom, you need to go back to the next dome car in the hallway.
there's always something
And the
special.
concession car will be this one.
Okay, thank
We
you.
want to let you know that there are restrooms on board and trash receptacles in all of the sitting areas. You are welcome to visit our concession area during our journey. We offer a limited menu such as sandwiches, chips, cookies, snacks, soft drinks, and bottled water. We do ask just one or two people from your group visit the concession car and purchase the items from the entire group due to social distancing regulations. Also, due to CDC restrictions, we ask that you not roam the train today. Masks are required at all times on the train, and we require an adult to accompany any children to the restroom before returning to your assigned car. And we would greatly appreciate it if you could keep your shoes on your feet and your feet off the seats. And please remember there is no smoking, vaping, e-cigarettes, or alcohol on the train.
On the train now.
My name is Larry, and I'll be your narrator on our trip
Going
today.
to Arkansas.
I wasn't born here, but I
That's
got
right.
here as quick as
I know
I
you've been
could.
on the trip. This is the first time.
My mother was
Now we're on the
born
other side of
here.
it. We're on the other side of the
Born in
train.
the house that I lived in back in 1895. I'll be pointing out areas on the east and west sides of the train as we go along. So to help you get your bearings, the east side of the train is the side that you boarded from. We are making one final pause at our station before rolling out to the main line. And once we get going, you'll need to hold on tight to something or someone because we will be blazing through the Ozarks at our amazing top speed of 25 miles an hour. Now, if you look to the east, you'll see the beautiful Lake Tennessee. It is the oldest lake on the White River. It was established in 1913. When formed, it was a 22-mile-long warm water lake. But in 1958, the waters became icy cold, and they stay that way year-round. Now, I'll tell you more about why that is near the end of our journey. We are about to cross Lake Tennessee right now on what is called the Middle Tennessee Bridge. It was one of the first all-steel bridges built in the Ozarks. We'll be 35 feet high above the icy waters as we cross the beautiful White River Valley and continue on our journey.
Oh my God. Southbound excursion today. This is the town of Hollister, Missouri, once known as the English Village of the Ozarks due to its old English architecture, which you'll see on the east side of the train as we go along historic Downing Street. On the west side of the train, you'll see the Hollister City Hall and the old Missouri Pacific Hollister Depot, which was built in 1910. Now, the creek you see over on the east side is Turkey Creek, and it's named for those wild turkeys that roam these hills. You're also apt to see ducks, geese, turtles, river otters, and blue herons along the creek. I saw one of the blue herons on the last trip, so we know they're out there. And I just saw the turkey buzzards.
Look at the creek.
And there's another one soaring above.
The creek.
You might also see other wildlife along the way, such as white-tailed deer, coyotes, foxes, or maybe even a bobcat or a black bear that's wandered up from the woods. In the hills ahead, you may see a red-tailed hawk or perhaps an American bald eagle soaring high above the tree. But more than likely, you'll see a turkey buzzard or two, and you already did. These turkey buzzards are common all over the Ozarks. It's a large black bird with a wingspan of nearly 6 feet. They're not so pretty to look at up front, up close, but you'll have to admit they are beautiful as they soar through the hills. Now, if it is an adult turkey buzzard, it has a red head, and if it has a black head, then it's a black vulture.
What was that bird?
We have a special announcement. I'd like to wish happy birthday to Savannah. She is 7 years old today. Congratulations on making it that far. And we just crossed the Turkey Creek Bridge, and so we'll begin climbing the 8-mile hill known as Stark's Grave. On these tracks there used to be several high wooden trestles, some over 100 feet high, but that created many headaches and expenses for the railmen who maintained these right-of-ways. So in 1907, the Missouri Pacific Railroad began the long and arduous process of filling in these wooden trestles, creating the man-made earthen embankments that we ride on today. It took me many years to accomplish this, since there were 284 trestles on the 239 miles of track. It wasn't until 1980 that the last trestle was buried. Up ahead, we'll be passing through an area where the old railroad town of Melba, Missouri once stood. In the early 1900s, Melba was a prospering little mining and farming community of a few hundred people. Several lead and zinc mines prospered in the area, and many railroad workers and their families called Melba their home. However, in 1920, a devastating tornado destroyed the entire town, and Melba never rebuilt. If you look to the east, surely you should see the remains of the old Melba Hotel. It's just a foundation and a fireplace. But please keep a sharp eye because we do pass it very quickly. You know, as parents, we like to think we always make the best decisions for our kids, and as the tornado or the bad weather back in 1920 was approaching, the parents decided to keep all of their kids home from school that day. Unfortunately, the empty schoolhouse was one of the only buildings that was spared by the tornado. There were at least 10 deaths, and the Missouri Pacific Railroad dispatched a train to Melba and transported the injured and the bodies back up to Branson on these very tracks, and the injured were treated in a makeshift hospital on the roof of the Parnell department store. The Parnell building still exists. It's on the southwest corner of Commercial and Main Street, just 200 blocks from our depot. At this time, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the building of this railroad. The vast majority of the White River Line was constructed between 1901 and 1906. It took more than 5,000 men and nearly $12.5 million to build the 239 miles of track between Carthage, Missouri, and Newport, Arkansas. The building of this mountainous section was a major part of the project. The men tunneled through 5 different mountains and built the 284 wooden trestles crossing the valleys. They also built more than a dozen high bridges crossing the Ozark rivers and streams. The cost of building this mountainous section was around $100,000 per rail mile, which was about 5 times the cost to build the other sections. These tracks were owned by the Missouri Pacific Railroad up until 1986, when they completed a merger with the Union Pacific Railroad. Then, 6 years later, in 1992, the Union Pacific granted a permanent lease to the Missouri and Northern Arkansas Railroad, and we continue to use their engineers to operate our trains. We certainly are proud of our engineers and the professional job that they do. Now, the forest that we are passing through is considered an oak, hickory, hardwood forest. We have lots of other trees out there, of course, including the eastern red cedar, shortleaf pines, walnut, maple, ash, my favorite, the pawpaw tree, sassafras, sweet gum, sycamore, and others. It's easy to spot the sycamores due to the white bark in their upper branches. And in the spring, our hills are covered with absolutely beautiful flowering dogwood, redbud, and wall plum. And you can always tell a dogwood by its bark. Folks, if you're holding back for better jokes, they ain't coming. Now we should have some good color in our leaves. It looks like maybe a couple weeks out now. I got to be on vacation last week. Went up to the Adirondacks, rail biking across some really beautiful upstate New York, and it was at the peak of colors up in that area. So hopefully we'll get some more color in a couple of weeks here. Now, over on the east side of the train, you'll notice a barren grassy area that looks a lot like a earthen dam, and we'll pass another one shortly. This is part of the Branson Airport runway that opened in 2009. The runway may just be the flattest spot in the entire Ozarks.
I hope so.
folks, we're about to cross over the state line into Arkansas. Hope you packed your passports. The state line is represented by a small white sign on the west side of the train and can be best seen from the lower levels of the train. Now, if you blink, you just might miss it. Welcome to Arkansas. Folks, coming up is the Crest Tunnel. It's named that because it lies at the crest of Tharp's Grade, which is the highest point of elevation on our journey at 1,200 feet above sea level. Now that's 500 feet higher than the depot back in Branson. It was cut through solid rock in 1903 and 1904. Now, the men who worked on this tunnel used steam drills and dynamite inside the mountain. They were able to clear about 5 to 10 feet of rock per day, but even after adding a night shift, it still took nearly 2 years to complete the 3,485-foot long Crest Tunnel. Now, that's over 2/3 of a mile of solid rock and total darkness.
Feels like it's nighttime.
At this time, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our locomotives and the vintage rail cars that you're riding in today. There's a locomotive at each end of our train. Both locomotives were built by the General Motors Electromotive Division for the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. All of our vintage passenger cars were built by the Budd Company of Pennsylvania in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, and they are owned by the Branson Scenic Railway today. The locomotive at the front of our train in our current direction of travel is our number 99. It's a 1961 model GP 30M with 16 cylinders producing 2,000 horsepower and weighing in at 360,000 pounds. It was rebuilt in 1982 and used for freight service on the B&O and CSX railroads until 1994. Then it was purchased by the Branson Scenic Railway in 1995. It was repainted in 1999 and appropriately numbered our locomotive number 99. Next we have our power car, which is used to generate the electricity for our lights and air conditioning on the train. And then we have our Silver Eagle car, built in 1949 for the Texas and Pacific Railroad. This coach has 60 reclining seats and spent time in the Indiana Transportation Museum before being restored and leased to Amtrak. The Silver Eagle was finally purchased by the Branson Scenic Railway in April of 2001. The next car up is our Silver Garden car, a dome, buffet, and lounge car built for the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad in 1952. It worked for the Kansas City and American Royal Zephyr trains for the Burlington Northern until the birth of Amtrak in 1971. That's when the majority of America's passenger service was turned over to Amtrak. Our next car is the Silver Lake, our 1952 buffet dining car, which was once known as the Casimir Pulaski as it operated for Amtrak. It was added to our fleet in 1997 as our concession car, and that's where you'll find your victuals, fixin' drinks, and goodies. Next up is our newest addition, the Silver Bell. This 48-seat car was purchased by the Branson Scenic Railway in 2019. Next is the Silver Terrace, built in 1952 as a Vista Dome parlor and observation car. It was part of the original order to equip the Kansas City Zephyr. It was purchased by the Branson Scenic Railway in 1998 from a private owner. It was completely renovated and joined our Ozark Zephyr fleet here in Branson in December of 2001. The next car in our consist is our Silver Island Dome and Lounge car. Built in 1947 for the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad. This dome car was used on the Twin City Zephyr, as well as others for the Burlington Northern Railroad until the birth of Amtrak. Now we have the Silver Chef, a beautiful 48-seat dining car built in 1956 for the Burlington Railroad. It was used on the Denver Zephyr and later worked for Amtrak on the San Francisco Zephyr until joining the Branson Scenic Railway in 1997. It is also used on our Saturday evening dinner trains. The oldest car on our train today is the Westport. Built in 1939 for the Atlantic coastline. It worked on the famous Champion train, which took the rich and famous from New York to Florida on vacation. It's now also used for our Saturday evening dinner train, which is another delightful experience recreating the dining pleasure of days gone by. And finally, the locomotive at the other end of our train is locomotive number 98. It's a 1951 model F9 PH type designed for use on passenger trains. This 16-cylinder engine produces 1,800 horsepower and weighs in at 340,000 pounds. Rebuilt in 1981, it was used on the Bar commuter service in Maryland and joined our Ozark Zephyr fleet in 1995. It was again rebuilt in 1998 and appropriately numbered locomotive number 98. We are now passing the town site of Old Clifton, Arkansas. It had its own train depot up until March of 1960 when the last passenger train came through here. Just ahead is our second tunnel, called the Cricket Tunnel. It was constructed at the same time as the Crest Tunnel in 1903 and 1904, and it's just a little bit shorter, about a half a mile long. The area that we're passing through is called Rainbow Ridge, and that means we are approaching the Walnut Creek Trestle. Now, this trestle was originally built over 100 years ago, and you'll soon be 113 feet high above the Little Walnut Creek. This will be a good photo opportunity for those of you on the lower levels on the east side of the train. You may be able to capture a couple of pictures of our train as it crosses this curved trestle. And here we are at the Walnut Creek Trestle, and if you get to the east side of the train, you'll have a rare opportunity to see both ends of our train as we cross this curved trestle bridge. And we are coming to a stop here because this is our return point back to Branson. Now we ask everyone to check your train tickets. Does everybody have them? Well, if your train ticket number is circled, we'll raise that high so that everyone can see it. If your train ticket number is circled, well, that means you purchased a one-way ticket and we're going to let you hop off. It's pretty hard to get lost. You just follow the tracks back to Branson. Of course, we're just teasing you, and we certainly hope you've enjoyed the trip so far, and we know you're bound to spot a few things on our return that you didn't see on the way out, and I did see that little heron after we talked about it. There was on the way out, so you might see it when you're by the Turkey Creek on the way back. So just a friendly reminder to mask up if you'll be moving about the train on your way to either the restrooms or the concession car. And I'm going to do you all a big favor and be quiet for a while on the way back. As we get closer to town, back on here, we'll get a little more information for you.
Mom, see the bra right there?
How do they get a bra out there? Look at all the birds flying. Oh, you guys got them on y'all side? Look at all the birds flying. Sunshine, we should have took a picture of it. Look, with us in the background. This